Hello, everyone. My name is Stacy Pursell with the Vet Recruiter, and it is great to be here this afternoon with you. Joining me today is Debbie Boone of To Manage Vets. We're glad that you have also joined us for today's presentation, which is titled Under the Microscope, Professional Reputational Management. Debbie and I work extensively in the veterinary profession and the animal health industry, and we speak with veterinarians and other professionals in the veterinary profession and in the animal health industry on a regular basis. As an executive search consultant and veterinary recruiter for more than 20 years, I speak with professionals while they're considering other employment opportunities and while they're in the interviewing and hiring process. And for the first part of today's presentation, that is what I'll be discussing. How you behave during the interviewing and hiring process, how that can have a huge impact on your job search, your current job, and even your career. I want to start out by pointing out that the veterinary profession is not a huge profession. It is relatively limited in scope. It's not like manufacturing or engineering or some other industries which are much bigger. And this is important to note because when you make a mistake in professional reputational management, they can become magnified in a small profession like the veterinary profession. You've probably heard of the 6 degrees of separation or even the 6 degree of Kevin Bacon, where an actor or actress knows someone who knows someone who knows someone, all the way until someone knows the actor Kevin Bacon. Well, in the veterinary profession, it's more like the 2 degrees of separation. That's where you know someone who knows someone else. This becomes a problem when you do not manage your reputation properly. In such a situation, everyone with whom you've had contact with and who has witnessed your behavior knows someone that you will likely cross paths with in the future. So it's not like you can commit reputation infractions and then hide from the rest of the world or think that no one is going to find out about it other than the few people who witnessed it. In the animal health industry and veterinary profession, that is simply not the case. Unfortunately, however, there are some people who do not view things in that fashion, and that's one of the reasons that Debbie and I are making this presentation today. During today's presentation, Debbie and I are going to relay several stories to you. I refer to them as case studies because there is much to be learned from them. These are stories that involve veterinary professionals who have made mistakes in the area of reputational management. I believe it's important to tell these stories because you can learn from the mistakes they contain. It is far better to learn from the mistakes of other people than to have to learn from your own mistakes. That way, you can take the wisdom from the situation without having to experience any of the pain associated with it. That being said, this first story deals with someone in the banking industry. Rest assured, though, I do have other stories that deal with the veterinary profession, and I'm going to talk about those, but there are also plenty of lessons to be drawn from this case study involving a banker. So a colleague of mine placed a bank president a number of years ago, and this bank president committed to joining a new bank, and the bank was expecting him to show up for work at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. However, by 9 a.m., he had neither showed up for work nor contacted the bank. So my recruiting colleague tried calling him at home with no luck. So he kept trying, and then finally by noon, he reached his wife, who informed my colleague, the executive search consultant, that her husband had decided to stay with his current employer, his current bank. Well, it would have been really nice of him and professional of him to inform both my colleague and his new employer of that decision, but he had not. So interestingly enough, 6 months later, the president's bank was purchased by the employer that he had burned. So what was the first thing that they did? Well, you guessed it, they fired him. So the moral of this story is a simple one. Always keep your word, especially when you tell a company that you have accepted its offer of employment and will start on a certain date. Because this bank president burned a bridge, so to speak, and he thought he could get away with it. But as you can see, he did not get away with it. Professional reputational management is basically the same concept as personal branding. I'm going to use two definitions for personal branding that are basically the same but also different. The first one comes from Wikipedia. According to Wikipedia, personal branding is essentially the ongoing process of establishing a prescribed image or impression in the mind of others about an individual, group, or organization. That sounds really sterile and informal, doesn't it? Well, there's really not much that is personal in that description of personal branding, but I have another definition. This is in the form of a quote that I came across recently by motivational speaker Jay Danzy, and it goes like this: "Your smile is your logo. Your personality is your business card. How you leave others feeling after having an experience with you becomes your trademark." The part of that saying that I want you to focus on today is how you leave others feeling after having an experience with you. That is, in essence, the definition of personal branding. Forget words like prescribed image or impression. Instead, focus on how other people feel after having an experience with you, because how they feel will directly impact what they think about you. Those two things go hand in hand. So the next question you might be asking is, well, how does personal branding actually work? Well, it's a process, an interaction between you and other people. And remember two important things about personal branding. First, it's a never-ending process. As long as you're alive, you're engaged in personal branding. And second, at the same time you're branding yourself to other people, they are branding themselves to you. So it's like an exchange. All of this is happening at the same time, even if a large part of it is happening subconsciously. Second, when we talk about the process by which personal branding works, it happens as soon as you interact with someone. As soon as you engage with someone, they're noticing everything about you. That's just natural. They're forming an opinion about you, and like I said, it's not even a conscious decision. It's done subconsciously, but it's still being done. During the entire time that you engage with the person, they're forming opinions and impressions about you, and the sum of all of those add up to how they feel about their overall experience with you. And as I said earlier, how they feel about their overall experience with you forms the basis for how they brand you. So how can you influence this process? Remember first that when it comes to your personal brand, other people ultimately decide how they will brand you in their minds based upon the feelings they have during their experience with you. Since that's the case, you do not have ultimate control over your personal brand. However, you do have influence, and you have a great deal of influence, in fact, more than you think. That's because you can strive to give people the best experience possible. Your efforts to do this will influence how other people brand you in their minds. I want to give you some guidelines about how you can easily influence the personal branding process. There are fundamental rules regarding human interaction that are universal and unbreakable. These rules dictate that people are attracted to certain types of people and they're repelled by other certain types of people. And when I tell you these rules, you'll agree that they're both very simple and logical. Here they are. People are attracted to other people who relieve pressure, reduce stress, and do not cause drama in their lives. On the other hand, people are repelled by others who create pressure and stress and do cause drama in their lives. So the basis of the experience that you provide for other people should involve relieving pressure, reducing stress, and not causing drama. If you're able to accomplish those things at the very least, then you are well on your way to building a positive personal brand.
Now, there is a second step to the personal branding process, and just like the first step, it's an important one, and I call it the validation of experience. And that's because there are multiple stages to the branding process. The second step involves action as opposed to words. Most everyone tries to brand themselves with their words, but words only get you so far. You must back those words up with actions. And this is very important because you can say that you're going to do this or you're going to do that, but you ultimately have to show people that you're going to follow through. And that's because, as the saying goes, words are cheap. As an example, I have known people in my life who like to say that they're trustworthy, but in actuality, they really weren't. And it's not just enough to say that you're trustworthy, because anyone can do that, but you have to back up your words with actions that really prove that you're trustworthy. My mother always used to say to me when I was growing up, she would say, don't listen to what other people say, but watch what they do. And I found out during my life and during my career as an executive recruiter that she was absolutely right about that. As a result, other people's perception of you is based on your actions and not your words. So if you want people to have the correct perception of you, and if you want them to brand you the right way, then your actions must fall in line with that correct perception. Even if you believe that someone has the wrong perception of you, perception is reality. And that includes in the employment marketplace and in the workplace. So if someone has a bad perception of you or an incorrect perception of you, then that still represents your personal brand, and that is something that you must guard against. Okay, so I have an example to illustrate this, and this example is not getting back to people when they contact you and they expect you to get back to them, or not following up with someone when you've told them that you would. If you do this, then the other person is going to think that you're absent-minded or at the very least discourteous. Now, if it happens more than once, then they'll start to think that you're unreliable. And in my experience, being branded as unreliable is not good for your career. And that because unreliable is close to being untrustworthy. So being someone who can be trusted is extremely important in the employment marketplace. Hiring managers want to hire people who they feel that they can trust. So if they think someone is unreliable or trustworthy, then they're not going to hire them. I have a few examples of this. I have somebody who recently did not present themselves in a credible manner. I reached out to somebody about an employment opportunity, and he said he was interested, and he said that he would send his resume and call by 5 o'clock that evening. Well, he did not send his resume by the time that he said, and he didn't call by 5 o'clock. And by 7 o'clock, he still had not called. So he said he was going to do two things, send his resume and call by a certain time, but he didn't do either one of those things. So as a result, he lost credibility, and that's not the way to start a relationship with the recruiter or the way to start a relationship with anyone. A search consultant's reputation is ultimately on the line, so they only want to present credible candidates who are both reliable and dependable. I have another example, and this is something that actually happened last week. There was a candidate who reached out to me to ask for help with her job search. So we set up a time to talk on a particular day at a particular time last week. And she was supposed to call me, and I did not have her phone number, so I could not call her. But I wasn't trying to recruit this individual. She had reached out to me to ask for my help with her job search. I was just getting back from a trip, but I prepared for her call. I took the time to prepare, but she didn't call. And since I didn't have her number, I sent her a note through LinkedIn, and I asked her to give me a call because I was waiting for her call, and she didn't do that. So she said she was going to call at a certain time, but she didn't. So instead, she unfortunately branded herself as being unreliable. So you've probably heard of the golden rule. And no, the rule does not state that those who have the gold make the rules. Instead, it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And many of you might think that this is an old or antiquated rule, that it really does not apply to today's society or today's workplace, but that is far from the truth. It doesn't matter if it's today or 500 years ago. Interactions between people remain the same. And that means the rules for interaction between people have remained the same, and the golden rule is one of them. When it comes to personal branding and professional reputational management, this is an excellent rule to follow. In addition to that rule, I'd like to also discuss a principle called the principle of reciprocity. And that means when someone gives you something, you feel compelled to give them something back in return. Conversely, when you first give something to someone else, they will feel compelled to give something to you in return. And I think this philosophy is best summed up with a quote by motivational speaker Zig Ziglar, who said, "You can have everything in life that you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want." So focus on what you can do for other people. Focus on the value that you can provide for them. If you make that your focus and you're benefiting other people, then what you want will be taken care of. And when you do this, not only are you branding yourself in a positive way, but you're also building your professional reputation the right way. And then on top of everything else, you're increasing the chances that you'll get what you want because other people will feel compelled to help you. And that is a win-win situation. So the next part might be the most important part of my presentation today, and that's because I'm going to talk about integrity. And I feel that I must address this topic because I have seen people derail their career by not acting with integrity. And unfortunately, I have seen people, even in our own profession, not act with integrity in their everyday life. If you want to brand yourself the right way and maintain a good reputation, then you must act with 100% integrity all the time. And what does that mean? It means, for example, telling the absolute truth on your resume and not exaggerating, showing up for a face-to-face interview when you said that you'll be there, telling the absolute truth about your experience and qualifications during a job interview, telling the hiring manager or recruiter that you're no longer interested in a position if that's the case, or letting a hiring manager know if you've already accepted a job offer from another employer, or showing up for work if you've accepted an offer of employment with a company. And you might be thinking, well, of course I should do all of these things. But I can tell you from personal experience that some people have not done these things, and that has hurt their career. So what should you not do if you're committed to acting with 100% integrity all of the time? So for some examples of things not to do would be taking credit for achievements that aren't actually yours, assigning blame to someone else for your shortcomings, saying and doing unprofessional or hurtful things to coworkers, misrepresenting results to management, or basically any lie or deception that makes you look better at the expense of others. Remember the story that I told about the bank president at the beginning of the presentation? Well, I have a couple of other case studies that illustrate what it means to act with integrity, or in the case of these studies, what it means to not act with integrity. So a client of ours was filling an open position, and that client hired one of the candidates that we had presented. And the client made an offer to this individual, and the person accepted the offer. However, right after that, the person received an offer from another organization. So even though they had committed to our client, they accepted somebody else's offer too. And then this person waited until right before their scheduled start date with our client to let our client know that they would not be coming to work for their first day because they had actually accepted two offers and they had chosen to start work with the other organization. I have another case study involving an executive who accepted an offer of employment with one of our other clients. And our client went all out for this person, buying a laptop computer and a phone and getting this person's office all ready for them to start. And the company was very excited about this person joining the organization. And then unfortunately, this person sent an email instead of calling that they were not going to be starting employment because of personal issues. And they sent it just, I think it was the day before they were supposed to start. And so this person was very vague and evasive in the email, but I finally convinced her to speak with me on the phone. So during our conversation, she finally admitted to me that it wasn't personal issues that prevented her from starting work with my client. Instead, it was the fact that she had accepted a counteroffer with her current employer. So I wanted to present another great quote from Zig Ziglar because I really like what he has to say. And that quote is, "The most important persuasion tool that you have in your entire arsenal is integrity." And that quote is 100% true. If you brand yourself as a person of integrity and your professional reputation is one of integrity, then you have much more influence than someone who has not branded themselves in that way. And if others believe that you are a person of integrity, they will see you as trustworthy. And as I mentioned earlier, branding yourself as being trustworthy is one of the best things that you can do for your career. So I want to transition from integrity to a troubling trend that we're seeing within the employment marketplace right now. And that trend is known as ghosting. And it refers to a situation in which a candidate who is part of an organization's hiring process simply does not show up for something. It could be a phone screen or a face to face interview. Both of those are bad enough, but there are also two other instances that are even worse, and I'm going to illustrate them with another two case studies. So recently, one of our clients extended an offer of employment to a candidate, and the candidate said that he would give an answer on the job offer within 48 hours, but then he just disappeared. The 48 hours went by, and we didn't hear from him. A week went by, we did not hear from him. We called, both myself and our client. We called, we left voicemail messages, we emailed, nothing. And so that is called ghosting on a job offer. You get an offer and you just don't respond. So the second case study is even more severe, and I call it the mysterious case of the missing candidate. So like the bank president story, it does not involve a veterinary professional, but it still shows the attitude that some candidates have in the employment marketplace right now. So a colleague of mine who is also an executive recruiter recently was telling this story. So he placed a candidate that was just 25 years old in a position with one of his clients, and she was scheduled to start work on a Monday. So Monday came and went, and she did not show up for work to start her new position. And of course, the search consultant's client let him know about the situation. So this recruiter called the candidate to check on her whereabouts, but she did not answer. And so my recruiter colleague became very worried, wondering if something had happened to her, like maybe she was in an automobile accident or there was some kind of a family emergency or tragedy. And he really was concerned, and so was the employer. So another day passed, and he continued to call, but she did not answer her phone. So it really got to the point where he was asking himself, should I contact the police and fill a missing persons report, because this is really concerning. And so then he realized that he had the phone number of the candidate's father, so he called and expressed his concern to her father, detailing his plan. He said, I was about to contact the authorities because I was really worried about her. And so her dad said that he had actually just seen his daughter twice, including over the weekend. And so as the recruiter hung up the phone, he was even more perplexed. So 10 minutes later, the candidate called the recruiter, and she had not been in an automobile accident, and there had not been an emergency. So what happened is she had received an offer from another employer and had decided to accept that one too. She decided that the second offer was better, and so she started employment with that organization. It did not inform the first company that she wasn't coming to work. So that's what we call ghosting on the job itself, where you accept an offer of employment, you say that you're going to start work with a company, and then you simply don't show up, and you don't tell anybody what you're doing. You don't call the hiring manager and say, I'm not going to be there Monday because I accepted another offer. So there are two disturbing aspects to this trend. First, this is happening more and more often in the employment marketplace, and it's happening at all different stages of the hiring process. And second, there are a number of professionals that believe that this behavior is okay. As a recruiter for more than 20 years, I can tell you without a doubt that that is not okay. It's not professional. But the most common argument that I have seen and heard about ghosting is that during the Great Recession and the years that followed it, employers did not let job seekers know when they were no longer a viable candidate for their open position. So some candidates will tell you that that is where the no response is a response originated. So the candidates use that same logic. They will say, well, since employers did this during the Great Recession, then it's okay for me to do that as well. And so when they say that it's okay to do it, they mean that there should also be no consequences for them, no negative consequences specifically. However, I can say that that is not how the world works, and it's not how the world of employment works, especially in such a small profession like the veterinary profession or the animal health industry. And there are actually negative consequences for such behavior. Remember the 2 degrees of separation that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation? If you work in the veterinary profession and you ghost on an interview or on an offer of employment or your first day of work, the person who witnessed that probably knows other people that you could meet down the road. In fact, one of those people could be your manager at some point. So I wholeheartedly agree that right now we are in a candidate's job market, and there is no doubt about that. There is a scarcity of qualified candidates, and especially within the veterinary profession. And that means candidates, especially the best ones, have leverage. And I'm a big proponent of leverage. The more leverage that you have, the better position you are to make good decisions about your career. However, the manner in which you obtain leverage is just as important as the leverage itself. In fact, in some situations, it's even more important. So it's also critical to know that there is a limit to that leverage. So candidates cannot and should not expect to abuse that leverage in order to create a better situation for themselves because it hurts someone else. And that's a short-sighted strategy. And so all people are doing in that situation is sacrificing long-term career growth for short-term gains. And that risk does not the reward for that does not outweigh the risk. And the bottom line is that you don't do anything to burn bridges. When you attempt to abuse leverage, and that's when you burn bridges, either with your current employer, a potential future employer, or both. And you want to show that you have both basic manners and common sense. And that's how you brand yourself, and that's how you must build your professional reputation during your job search and also when you're interviewing with a veterinary practice or an animal health organization, because it all comes down to human decency, respect, and communication. So it's at this point that I'd like to turn our presentation over to Debbie Boone of Two Managed Vets, who will discuss professional reputational management at your current employer. And Debbie has more to say about this topic, and she's got some great information for you today. So Debbie, take it away.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me okay, everyone?
Yes.
All right. Okay, great. So thank you, Stacy, for enlightening us from the professional recruiter side of the profession. And I would like to move into practice where we actually have gotten into the fishbowl where every client is watching. I managed practices for 23 years, and I was the hiring manager who interviewed lay staff and associate veterinarians. I observed all kinds of behaviors in these interviews, from the assistant candidate who showed up for an interview in a crop top to the veterinarian who interviewed in a shirt so wrinkled it looked as if he had slept in it. Neither of them getting the job, by the way. I hired people who were well-spoken, whose resume or application was neatly written or typed and correctly spelled. Why? Because these people were going to be the face of my practice, presenting themselves as experts in patient care every day. They had to be confident and kind, communicative, and ultimately professional to gain the confidence of our clients. Understanding and satisfying your client's needs are the cornerstones of a successful business. Without the client, you have no reason for being. Even though we all signed up to be animal health team members, we quickly find out we're in the people business. And marketing specialists will tell you that you have 10 seconds to make a good first impression on a customer, and that it can take 3 years to overcome if you make a poor one. If you work in ER, you may only get one chance, because clients who visit an emergency hospital are not particularly thrilled to be there. In fact, they're usually in some kind of emotional distress. They would prefer to see their regular vet. So basically, you begin with the challenge to convert their discomfort to comfort the moment that they drive up. And you also have to remember that you have two sets of clients, which are your patient owners and your referring veterinarians. The best way I found in ER and specialty work was to make a connection by letting them know you are familiar with their regular vet. When we help owners shift the burden of care to our capable shoulders, we make them feel safe, and we utilize all of our customer service skills. Now, to be great at professional client service, you have to pay attention to people. In my classes on customer service, my students learn about reading body language. In order to be truly observational, you can't lose focus on the humans in your office. You also have to be aware that clients are always reading your body language. Not only do you need to present yourself as an authority, but you also have to show that you are empathetic and confident and open to their questions without taking offense. Perhaps you have had or will have some communication lessons, but we have to discuss body language as it pertains to professional presentation. There are signs we should learn to watch that indicate how our clients are feeling. And the components of body language involve every part of the body. So let's take a look at this slide, because what you see here are the various expressions of body language. Our face, our hands and arms, our feet, our eyes, our posture, and our appearance or our professional dress. If I ask you to guess, what would you think would be the most honest part of your body? When I ask that question in class, most of the time people will say, oh, your eyes or your face. But believe it or not, it is your feet. We do read all of the expressions on this slide, but our feet are not taught how to act in a certain way, and we are taught that way as children to behave. The ability of babies 2 days old to read the body language of their mothers has been documented by neuroscience. We are born with this ability. We just don't use it enough. Knowledge of body language shows us if others are nervous, irritated, stressed, about to cry, or about to blow up. Women and men manifest stress signals in different ways. Women will zing a bead on their necklace, or they'll rub their neck. Men will rub their tie or pull their collar or rub their face or hair. When seated, people will rub the top of their legs. If we notice these signs and we do what we can to relieve their anxiety, we also need to have self-awareness. Are we exhibiting any of these signs to the people we are communicating with? Because they will read a lack of confidence in it, especially if you're a doctor presenting medical cases. Watch your feet for signs of impatience and watch the client's foot. It will start to wiggle or speed up. They will look at a watch, sigh deeply, look at clocks or pace. A turned out foot means we need to end our conversation because the person needs to leave, and they will always walk away on the foot that is turned out. It is vital that you spend sufficient time with people to get all of their story, but also to respect their time enough to be efficient and not so chatty that you are irritating. We have all been victim of the long-winded person. Please don't let it be you. Body language gives us cues. Let's say you are new in your job position and you have a question that you need to ask your boss. Is it okay to interrupt them, or should you wait? Well, watch where they turn their hips when you approach. If they open their stance to include you in their conversation, it's fine to ask your question. If they don't and they keep their hips pointed toward the person they're speaking with, then you need to wait. What you wear is also being read by people. Is your clothing pressed or wrinkled, clean or covered in fur? Does it fit properly or clean tightly or bag like a sack? When you lean over, do we see all the way down to your waist? Or heaven forbid, we're seeing plumber's crack. In our practice, we hung a mirror at the treatment room door so you could check your appearance before you made your public appearance to a client. What does your jacket look like? Is your zipper up? Does your face have food left on it from lunch? Believe me, if you enter a room under any of these negative circumstances, your credibility has completely flown out the window. Professionals anticipate others' needs. The list on the slide is a general list of ideas for clients, but as doctors, you need to anticipate how your clients can comprehend your advice or follow through with home care and administer prescribed medications. Just because a drug is less expensive does not mean it's the best option for your person. Injectable medications for clients who have time constraints are a blessing. Non-child-proof caps for elderly people with arthritis. Telemedicine follow-ups for clients who live a long distance or struggle to come in. Basically, we think, if I were a client coming to my practice, what would make me feel welcome, appreciated, and safe? The last component of professional service is that it is always personal. It is tailored specifically for that person in front of you. See, no one enjoys working with a doctor or staff member who treats each client as if they were all cookie-cutter people. Each person is an individual, and we need to focus on discovering their personality style and then communicate with them exactly as they prefer. There's a lot of information about personality profiles, and much of it is about understanding yourself, which is incredibly important. but I have found it simplest to seek what others hate and avoid that when working with the public. I'd like to do a quick run through of DISC personality profiles now. So the first personality profile we're going to speak about is the driver. And you're all going to be joining teams or be members of teams where you're going to have to learn to fit in and work cohesively with each other. And learning to read other people's personality styles and understanding your own will be more beneficial to you than you will ever believe. So drivers hate wasted time. I always laugh and say if they had a tagline, it'd be "Get her done." It's best to move them through a process as quickly as possible and communicate with them in a very factual manner. They don't care for touchy-feely, and in fact is off-putting to them. To identify these people, you'll notice they communicate in a very to-the-point manner. They don't often speak about emotions, and they like to direct how things will go. They like to be in charge. To support them, allow them to dictate as much as possible how their visit with you will go. When booking return visits, ask them what time preference is first before offering. Just don't waste their time offering something they don't want or can't do. These really are nice people. They're just very definite about what they want and how they want it. And we can't always accommodate them, but we can certainly make our best effort. As a team member, this personality is often thought to be pushy or even a bully. But they are just get-it-done people who are irritated when others don't move as fast and get the task accomplished. Compliance just hates surprises. These are clients who want information and lots of it and very often. They want to know how much their bill is, incrementally as it rises. They want handouts and websites and data and more data so they can understand what's happening to their pet. They will be particularly stressed on ER because they couldn't plan ahead for the situation. They want to plan ahead for the financials, so offer your options and give them time to think about what they want to do. If this personality type is pressed, they always say no because they can't bear the thought of being wrong. Often in practice, we feel a sense of urgency to get to work on a patient, and in ER land, that is our life. But in general practice or specialty, you can't show your client that you're impatient with their slow decision making. It's actually okay to leave the room and let them ponder what you've offered. Don't miss the important thinking signs. You're going to recognize them by their multitude of detailed questions, their slow responses, and probably their glasses because they spend an inordinate amount of time reading. These are also the clients who will Dr. Google you. That's fine. Embrace the fact that they are interested in educating themselves and don't get offended. Sometimes they bring good information. After all, they have one pet to research and you have 50. So maintain your professional demeanor. As a team member, this personality will learn best by reading. They are good in the lab, inventory control, bookkeeping tasks, and their perfectionist tendencies will absolutely aggravate the drivers on your staff. Influencer are clients who never want to wait in the exam room alone. They hate to be by themselves, and they would prefer to be in the lobby where they can see and be seen. They will strike up conversations with other clients and with you. They make decisions based on how it feels in their gut, and they tend to have a short attention span when you are explaining boring, detailed things to them. They do well with video to educate. You'll recognize them by their outgoing personality. They will engage with the team and other clients. They will be easily distracted. Think squirrel. You will have to up your storytelling skills to engage them. They will be moved by a good, this client didn't do what I said and this is what happened tale. On your team, these are the fun people who always have something going on. They're excellent with the public, but they also struggle with details and nitpicky tasks when they're very strong in this type. Their learning style is hands-on, show and tell, not reading. Sometimes I think people feel professional means dry or businesslike or cold, but that is never true. People are social animals and they long for connections with others. And this is especially true of the steadiness personality. These clients will be the most emotional of all your clients. They will feel more guilt, more anxiety, more distress about their pet than the other types. With steadiness, you will see a lot of empathy and compassion. They will even show this to other pet owners who are waiting in the lobby with them. To best serve them, you need to validate their feelings and empathize with their problems. They have to know that you care about them and their pet. Use emotion-evoking words. Phrases like, I understand this is difficult. We really appreciate the effort you are making to help your pet. All show that you are relating to them. To recognize them, you will notice their word choice is very feeling-based. They will be more patient than most. They hate to hurt other people's feelings. But they can be passive-aggressive, so if you don't make them feel you really care, they will complain about you to the manager or leave a poor review online, but never tell you face-to-face that they are upset. As team members, these folks are excellent at the front desk. They are very good at bonding with clients and are the most supportive to others on the team in time of distress. They are also the most resistant to change and become stubborn if they don't feel the change is really needed. Now, the reason I feel DISC profiling is important in a professionalism discussion is because sometimes if we don't know and understand our own personality weaknesses, we lose our professional demeanor unexpectedly. Drivers tend to bark out orders and be demanding. Compliance can be slow and indecisive. Influencers can focus on themselves in situations and not follow through, and steadiness will be too easily hurt by a random remark and retaliate in a passive-aggressive manner. And all of these reactions are negative, and they diminish your stature with your fellow teammates and to your clients. Now, at present, we are also dealing with 4 to 5 generations in our work. The true professional respects the person in front of them and makes the proper accommodation that that person needs. You see, being self-focused in our communication is not a way to win over anyone. Our traditionalists are in their 70s plus, and they expect good manners, a respectful tone, things in writing, and face-to-face conversations. They do respect authority, so they are challenging at the front desk or to the technicians. They are often compliant when the doctor tells them the same thing. This is a little frustrating, but make sure you don't show it because traditionalists also demand respect for their age. They will always be Mr. or Mrs., even if you know them for many years. Baby boomers in their late 50s and 60s plus, these folks have been workaholic and driven most of their adult life. They won't like it if their pet's vet is not on duty when they think they should be at work. They like acknowledgement of their professional status, doctor, lawyer, CEO. Don't immediately jump to a first name basis with them. They will tell you when they want you to call them Jim or Jane. They are not afraid to question authority. Don't be intimidated, stand your ground, but politely and firmly. Gen X is in their 40s. They like the idea of work-life balance and connect with people through mutual hobbies and interests outside of work. They like technology. They'll be comfortable communicating with text or email, preferably text for short updates. The millennials in their 20s and 30s are super comfortable with tech and will prefer communicating this way. You may even get to the point where you text them when you have their exam room ready. They prefer more feedback than any other age group, and you may feel you're actually over-communicating with them, but you're not if you text several times a day to keep them updated on their pet's health. Gen Z, there are 15 to 20-somethings, and we find they are turning back to more face-to-face connections, but we're still waiting to see more about them as clients and workers. One of my very favorite business books is If Disney Ran Your Hospital. It was written by the hospital administrator of the hospital Disney uses in Orlando. To improve the patient experience, Fred Lee decided to take Disney training and then modify the lessons he learned for his hospital staff to use. Now, when you work for the happiest place on earth, you find you're considered a cast member who is always on stage. This is very similar to life at the veterinary hospital. People are watching and judging your every word and tone and action. What they have to see is a caring professional who has their best interests and their pet's best interests at heart. Another business guru, Peter Drucker, said the single most important needs of patients is assurance. We make people feel safe. In a satisfaction survey for human hospitals, they found the top drivers of patient satisfaction were, first, how well the staff work together to provide care. Second, the overall cheerfulness of the hospital. Third, responses to concerns or complaints made during the stay. Fourth, the amount of attention paid to personal and special needs. Fifth, staff sensitivity to the inconvenience of actually just being in the hospital. And sixth, how well the nurses kept you informed. Everything on this list can apply to veterinary care because all people want is a courteous and caring team that listens to their needs and works to fill them. Sometimes when I talk about observing clients, I do equate it with friendly stalking. But you have to pay attention to people in order to anticipate their needs. They should feel you're there for them before they really have to ask. When Disney created their 4 priorities, they put them in this order. First was safety, then courtesy, then the show, and then efficiency. Now, I can't really imagine people coming home from spending thousands of dollars at Disney and saying, wow, what a safe place that was. You see, safety is not something that people comment on in reviews. But if a Disney team member sees a child climbing a fence who will get hurt, they know the first priority of their job is to protect the child from harm. Safety is our first rule too. Protect the patient, protect the owner, protect the team. Think about this. If a patient cannot be safe at home, we admit them to the hospital. If they can recover at home, we'll release them. But courtesy is the second priority. And the definition of courtesy is behavior marked by polished manners or respect for others. We are sadly at a loss for good role models in our daily lives. The famous in our world act like 2-year-olds. Polite behavior is rarely modeled in the fast-food drive-thru, and respect for others is lost when parents don't teach children good manners and etiquette. People look like they slept in their clothes when they go out into the world. But good manners are simply respectful behaviors towards others. Mostly they are small acts of kindness. The list on this slide are exactly that. Respectful acts of kindness to others. We don't stare at people. We hold doors for others. We make room when they're walking down the hall. We speak politely in low tones and avoid slang, or we don't discuss rude topics or bodily functions. I've always laughed and said in veterinary medicine, our level of disgust is much lower than the normal person working around the world. So we have to realize that what we think is fascinating medically is really gross to our clients. Now, how do we manage introductions? If you're with 2 people who don't know each other, but you know both of them, it is your responsibility to make the introduction with good manners. Follow these steps. The person who is of higher social rank should have the second person introduced to him or her. That is, the person of lower rank is the one who should be presented to the person of higher rank. For example, Ms. Jones, I'd like to introduce you to my good friend Jessica. Jessica is the person of lower rank because she's younger. And it's relatively easy in most situations to figure this out, but here's some guidelines to when it's a little less clear cut. Younger people are always presented to older people. Men are always presented to women. Lay people are always presented to clergy, public servants, members of the military, or other people of higher rank. If you're still confused, just go with your best judgment. It is also important in professionalism to groom yourself appropriately. Whether you're going to your school or your job or just the grocery store, your pristine manners will go unnoticed if you look like a train wreck. Take a shower every day. Keep your hair, skin, nails, and clothing as clean as possible. Brush your teeth, and if you smoke, use mouthwash and Febreze on your clothing. Don't eat offensive foods that give you bad breath, and don't wear perfumes. Many people are incredibly allergic to them. And now they're trapped in an exam room with you. Always keep in mind that you are going to be standing very close to most other people. It's unavoidable in the treatment room, holding an animal, in the exam room, working with a client, even in a euthanasia situation where people will drape themselves over your shoulder and cry. You need to smell good. Doctors will spend an inordinate amount of time on the telephone with clients of all ages, and you must do it well. Good phone etiquette is not limited to the CSRs in practice. Answering the phone is an all-team effort, and the impression you make here will carry into the face-to-face visit. It is incredibly important that we smile and speak in a pleasant tone when we're on the phone. Even though people can't see us, it can be heard in your voice. Always don't be over chatty. People are very busy. It's important that we learn how to place people on hold and to take a good message. I always prefer asking the client if we could take the message, because this puts them in the driver's seat. It's not my decision to make them to continue to hold. It is their decision whether they want to hold or have me take a message. Never ignore a client to check your personal phone. What this is saying to that person in front of you is that you don't matter. That whatever this is, this notification, this chat, this meme, matters more than you do. And it is incredibly rude. Disruptions are normal. If possible, when you do phone calls, find a quiet spot where you can focus on the person you're speaking with. We want to engage in active listening. Good listening skills will help you tremendously as a clinician, as a technician, or as a CSR, and it will also aid in avoiding mistakes. A recent study in human medicine found that doctors could diagnose with great accuracy, 78%, by only listening to the problems of the patient as they recited their story. This was before any diagnostics had been performed. Now, I think this is a fairly valid case for how we can work with telemedicine. That being said, learning to actively listen to the humans in our world will increase your professionalism and your diagnostic skills. How do I handle the upset client? What do I do if someone is angry and they won't listen to anything I say? This is difficult, and you certainly don't want to shout back at a client. That is absolutely not professional. In fact, becoming extremely calm. Let the person air their concerns until they realize all you're doing is nodding and making agreeable noises. Compare this to a reactive dog situation. Would you approach a dog that was snarling and growling at you? No. You would try to distract it with some treats, wait until it calms down, and then try to have an interaction. Those very same reactive brain reactions are happening in humans who are upset. The same stress hormones release. Don't argue, don't defend, don't excuse. Just wait and actively listen. When the client or that person has finished venting, say, "I'm so sorry to learn that. That's terrible for you. I'm sorry if in some way I contributed to you feeling this way." At this point, you can probably continue a conversation if the person is a little mollified and is more likely to talk instead of rant. Then you seek to stay in that dialogue by asking good questions until you find a solution that satisfies you both. I encourage you all to read the book Crucial Conversations. You're going to have a lot of them in your career, and this book is the roadmap for those challenging talks. Be very aware of your body language in these situations, and don't show irritation or anger. Drop your arms to your sides, relax, balance on both feet with them spaced directly under your hips, not spread apart. Slow the pace of your words and the volume of your voice can drop down. It will lower the energy in the room, and the client will calm and mirror your good manners. As Stacy discussed, professionalism is also important in the interview and job process. And we are in a tight job market, and the potential employee is in the driver's seats. There are a lot of jobs and there are a few candidates. But I've worked in veterinary medicine for over 33 years, and I can assure you it's a very small community. In my discussions with many veterinary practice managers, I hear tales of candidates applying for jobs and not returning calls to set up interviews. Or they set up interviews and they no-show, or they take the job and they no-show. And these managers are creating a list of those people whose lack of professional behavior causes them to act so poorly. They will not get the opportunity in the future when the economy turns and jobs are scarce, because it will happen. It's happened to me 3 times in my 33 years of professional hiring. Don't burn your bridges. A simple courtesy, phone call, or email thanking the manager for the opportunity but declining the position is all it takes to shine among the less well-mannered. It is the smartest to have a short, uncomfortable conversation now than carry this black flag over your career in the future. In reverse, managers should also use courtesy and contact ineligible or rejected candidates so they're not waiting in hopes of a call. Professionalism goes in both directions. Now, I'd like you to do this little exercise. I want you to think of someone you've worked with, or even a professor who you consider to be the most professional person in your life or in your hospital experience, and write down just 3 things they do to make you say that. After you do that, ponder on their behavior, their appearance, their kindness, and their manners. How did those actions make you feel when you were around those people? Now, write down 3 things that you feel you need to do to improve to be perceived as more professional. How will you accomplish this? What will you do to make it happen? You must create a plan for improvement. If not, we fall back into old habits. So ask your friends, a family, or teammates for some feedback on your professional behavior. Perhaps you can even have an accountability partner on your team, and both of you work at stepping up your professionalism. Because you see, by becoming a true professional, opportunity will find you and help you advance in your career. People in your network will notice. They will want to work with you and offer you surprising opportunities. You just never know where this path may lead. My own consulting and speaking career became just this way, with an unexpected offer from a pharmaceutical sales rep who saw a person she could trust to stand in front of 400 veterinarians and tell a story. Your professionalism will make you shine like a diamond in a field of coal. Work on it. Concentrate on it. It's important. Now I'm going to turn this back over to Stacy, and we're going to do some questions and answers. I'd always like you to know that this is going to be recorded for the future. If you didn't have an opportunity to see it all, we would be happy to have you join us later on as we get it posted.
Yes, such good information, Debbie. Thank you so much. And what's interesting is so many of the things that you said to do are relatively easy. They're not complicated. Things like, smiling and being polite and respectful and listening skills. And I made a note of the book you suggested on crucial conversations. I'm going to put that in my Amazon cart and get that book and read it. So again, thank you so much. Very good information. And I know we're at the end of our time, but we will take some questions and answers. If anybody has a question and would like to put that in the chat box over there on your panel. I know I've already received a question from somebody about applying for job opportunities, and I replied back on that. So if anybody has any other questions, just put those now. And if not, like Debbie said, we have recorded this webinar, so it will be available. Both Debbie and I are going to put the webinars on our website. They'll also be out on It'll be on YouTube as well, so feel free to contact either one of us, and we can send you a link that should be uploaded and available, I would say, if not tomorrow, by early next week. So it looks like we do have a question from somebody asking about the name of the book that Debbie recommended. And Debbie, I know you recommended the Crucial Conversations. Do you know who the author is on that book?
Can you hear me, Stacy?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. The authors, there's 4 authors, excuse me. And so if you just do the Amazon Crucial Conversations, you will not have a problem finding it. There's a list of authors. It started out as a research project.
And then I heard another book, too, that you mentioned, the one about when Disney runs your hospital. And that's another, I have not personally read that book. I've heard people talk about that book, quite a bit. So I'm going to have to read that book too. But those were the 2 books. Were there any other books that you mentioned, Debbie?
Well, I did not mention other books, but one I would suggest if people are interested in more body language learning is there's a book by Joe Navarro, who is an ex-FBI agent, and he wrote a book called What Everybody is Saying, and it is a primer on how to read body language. Except it is a fun read rather than being a textbook on body language reading, which can be pretty boring. So I would suggest his book too.
Yeah, so interesting though too, because like you were saying with the feet, and until you said that, I never would have known that. I would have also said the face too. So now I'm going to start looking at people's feet when I'm talking to them. But that is so interesting. So very good information. Let me just see if there's any other questions. I don't see any other questions. So I want to again thank you everyone for joining us today for the Under the Microscope Professional Reputational Management webinar. And again, thank you, Debbie, and we'll get the recording posted. And if you have any follow-up questions after today's webinar, feel free to reach out to either Debbie or myself. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.